say that insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. And that's what I have seen many teams using Agile delivery methodologies doing in the day-to-day. They go into building features, products, services, and at the end of the sprint or program increments, effectively of the delivery lifecycle, they share it with users and customers. And to their surprise, the users and customers don't like what they are seeing. So, to break this cycle of insanity, I'm here with you today to share how you can stop your Agile teams building the wrong thing by using in 4 days a design sprint method. Agile teams normally are very familiar with this cycle. You have some data that provides you or helps you generate ideas of new products, new services, new functionalities for existing ones. You move into building the smallest possible iteration of that feature, service, or product, an MVP, a minimum viable product. And then you launch it and you get customer data, customer feedback, the feedback loop that they call it. And with that, you can refine and come up with new ideas to improve that product or service. And we will go into building those ideas, launching it in feedback, and so on. So this cycle is really great and has served, in the 25 years that Agile has existed, has served many organizations to build really good products and services. However, it also has its own problems, because the reality is that many times what happens is that it can be many months before you get actually that user feedback. Many organizations fall into this, having the data, having the idea, starting building. And by the time they want to finish building something they have launched, they have run out of resources, they have run out of budget, they don't have people with the skills anymore, and they cannot launch anything to validate it with users. Or that build takes a very, very long time. And by the time they launch it, the products are not liked by the users. It's not anymore what the users wanted. Or it was not even in the first place what the users wanted, but we didn't understand it well enough. And that's what we have to do, is breaking that cycle and validate that idea of a product, of a service, new functionality before we move into building it. So we have to do this validation, and the way we can do it very easily is with a design sprint. A design sprint is a 4 days process for rapidly validating solutions for big challenges, ideas about new products, or improving existing ones. It's a process that was developed by Google Ventures. And since then, it was developed in 2010, it has been used by many organizations to make these decisions. How do we progress with this big challenge? The first time it was used by Google Ventures, the prototype that came out of that was Google Meet or Google Hangouts, which is the current service that Google has to help organizations and people connect over video conferencing, chatting, and so on. And how does design sprint help organizations? Well, when you run a design sprint, it helps you reduce risk because you have, in 4 days, meaningful information about if it's worth investing or not in a solution, what are the risks, what are the challenges for users to use that solution that will stop them from using it, investing in it, wanting to have it. It also helps accelerate innovation because you compress in 4 days the focus of a small group of experts to come up with the ideas to solve a specific problem and get prototypes and feedback from real users about if that idea is worth moving forward with. Additionally, because you have that group of experts from different areas together, from we have a problem until we have came up with ideas, prototype one that makes sense, and get user feedback, that brings alignment across the organization and actually helps create momentum across teams. And finally, you also get customer-focused solutions and customer buy-in because users are involved at the end providing feedback. Your users are committed and invested on you making that solution happen and finding the right solution for the problems. So when we say we do Agile, that's absolutely fine. As I have mentioned, Agile has helped many organizations deliver great products and services. However, Agile is 25 years old, and there are things like design sprint that can even enhance and bring more out of you running Agile methodologies. Because if you are using Agile methodologies, a problem you might encounter is that you are building without the certainty that the solution you are focusing on is worthwhile building. You might have your product backlog and you might iterate, Depending on the size of the organization, you might have sprints that might last 1 or 2 weeks, or you might do a planning over 3 months, a program increment, and within those 3 months, you might have several sprints. But ultimately, no matter how you are iterating using Agile, you have a product backlog and you end up with finished work, finished features, functionalities that are shared with the customers. And all of that success of what the customers like at the end of that delivery depends on the quality of what you bring into your backlog. And what happens many times is that there are challenges to bring good quality there. Many times, what is there might be based on assumptions. And it might be based on assumptions because either we have not spoken with real users, or when we have spoken with real users, that market research has not been well facilitated. It might have been a conversation, but both the people interviewing and the users might have not shared fully because in their mind they have some ideas that are so obvious that they fail to mention. It might happen that we actually get that input very late. We might even wait until the feature is launched before we get that input. Many times what happens is that we might bring to the backlog a let's copy what our competitors are doing. Or other times it might come with the users have requested we implement this technology or this capability, and we have added that without understanding the real problem. What are the users really wanting to be able to do that they are not able to do today? What are the needs that we are meeting if we implement that? And overall, when this happens, what we are ending up with is wasting the time and the effort and the skills and the energy of our teams. Talking to customers is a must to bring things into a backlog, but however, it's not enough. What matters is that the quality of those conversations is the right one. Otherwise, we might end up speaking out hypotheticals, missing on what the customer really wants, bringing a lot of bias and assumption into what we build. When we have these customer conversations facilitated in a structured and purposeful way, supported by a prototype, the chances of getting real feedback on what the user wants, what the user needs, and what is a nice to have or please don't give it any that, it's much higher. And that's when a design sprint comes handy. So what you could do is when you are preparing for your Agile delivery, you don't only focus on the execution, but actually on the quality of what is in the backlog. And that's when the design sprint comes handy. Before your Agile delivery, being able to answer the questions about, are we solving the right problem? Will users actually want this solution? What is the minimum solution we should build that customers will be willing to use? And do we have stakeholder alignment? Are we all aligned on how to proceed with solving this problem? And when you want to do that before your Agile delivery, then is when you have the design sprint ahead of that time. So you continue doing Agile delivery as you do right now. You just happen to be doing design sprint for key problems that is worth sprinting for. And in 4 days, you will have much more clarity on what are the validated solutions that is worth moving into your Agile delivery backlog. With a design sprint in 4 days, you will move from having a clear problem, challenge, or opportunity that we need to solve to having a validated solution. And you will do that in those 4 days because you will define what do you want to test with the prototype, what are the answers you need to be getting from the prototype, ideate solutions that will help get those answers, prototype that solution, test with real users, and get enough information that you are able to decide what to do next. Do you need to refine the solution before you move into building it and test it again with users? Do you need to actually think about a different solution? Is a no-go, this is not the way forward? Or yes, let's go and let's build this because this is the right way forward. And in 4 days, you achieve this with a design sprint when it's well facilitated. And these have been proven by many organizations that have run design sprints. For instance, many organizations have run design sprints to improve digital experiences of users. In UK, the government used design sprints to help users understand visa options. When people needed to request visas online, it was difficult for them to understand the different options and what was the one that suited them. By running a design sprint, the team that was building that part of the gov.uk website came with concrete ideas to help them move forward into the next stages of what to implement. In Uber, they have used design sprints to improve the interface for drivers so that they could complete rides safely and in time. And the design sprint gave us a streamline of ideas that help to run that driver experience in a better way. Netflix has used design sprints when they were having a decline on user engagement. Netflix used design sprint to come up with ideas about how to change the user interface, what data, what information was shown to the users so that they could find content that was attractive to them much faster and remain engaged with the platform. 3M, the manufacturer of Post-its, has used design sprints to create the vision of what could be the future of Post-it, moving from analog to digital. Some ideas came out of that design sprint that led to the creation of 2 applications, and one of them actually won several awards. Other organizations have used design sprints to inform their marketing strategy, particularly when they wanted to have a new audience. For instance, Slack in 2015 wanted to had a plateau in the number of active users, and they realized they needed to grow beyond being used by tech companies and move into other sectors and other industries. And they used design sprint to inform how to run marketing and how to approach marketing communication for companies outside technology. And that was part of the success of continued growing in active users. Hardware and physical products can also benefit from running design sprints. Sabioke is a manufacturer of robots, and when they developed a robot that was going to be used in hotels, for instance, to take your toothbrush from reception to the room, they were very concerned about how should the robot behave so that it was going to be accepted and not bother guests in the hotel. And by running a design sprint, the Sabioke team was able to identify what was that behavior that actually guests liked, enjoyed, and even felt excited about. And when they launched robots in hotels, they made it as a success in the news. And Lego has actually invested a lot on design sprint, and in 1 year they ran over 150 to solve different challenges. Other types of use cases could be Johnson & Johnson used design sprints in their pharma vertical, in the research aspects of pharma. And by running design sprints, they said that it helped them identify risks much earlier than without design sprints. And actually, because the design sprint team was a combination of Johnson & Johnson people and expert consultants that were from the outside, they were able also to gain critical knowledge much earlier in the process. Google has used design sprint to inform how to evolve their hiring strategy. Health departments have used design sprints to improve the experience of patients. For instance, dialysis patients who were not asking for pain treatment due to a stigma. Overall, all the organizations that run design sprints do it because they have problems that is worth and deserve a design sprint. And these problems are problems that are big enough to warrant the investment. It's worth having the team of experts for 4 days working on this as opposed to anything else. They are not too specific. If your problem is about how I add this feature in a website or in an app, or how I add this feature in a physical product, that's not worth design sprinting for. When you have a problem that you are not clear on the solution direction to take, that's when it makes sense to run a design sprint. When this is a high-stakes situation, if you get it wrong, if solving this problem, if the approach to taking advantage of this opportunity, you get it wrong, it's going to cost you. Particularly if it's going to cost you more than running a design sprint, that's when it's worth running a design sprint. When you need quick validation in days and not weeks or months for how to proceed with something, should we go and invest and create this big program? Yes, no. That's when you run a design sprint. And the challenge that you're trying to solve is too complex for only 1 or 2 people by themselves to solve it. And maybe you require that cross-functional team to come together and make it happen, that decision on how we proceed. So what does a design sprint look like? Well, a design sprint takes place over 4 days with a group of people from different areas. As I have mentioned before, it can be even bringing external experts on different areas. Depends on the challenge you are solving, who will be in the room. And it takes over following a structured process based on design thinking methodologies over that period of 4 days. In particular, on a standard design sprint schedule, on Monday, we will get the team to understand and align on the challenge we are trying to solve, define the success criteria for the design sprint, what are the goals of the sprint, and how are we gonna evaluate with the users what good looks like. We move into ideating and sketching solutions. On Tuesday, we vote on what are the best solution ideas that is worth moving forward as a prototype. In the afternoon, we prototype. We create the storyboard of the prototype. We build the prototype on Wednesday, and we also recruit users on Wednesday. And on Thursday, we test the prototype with the real users. We do interviews to get their feedback, and based on that feedback, then we can make decisions in the afternoon. Do we have to iterate in this solution, improve certain things before making any decision? Do we have to yes, it's validated, let's go ahead and move it in and build it? Or do we have to pivot and try a different solution? And this is the overall schedule. However, there is certain flexibility around it. We can adapt it based on remote settings. We can also bring some AI tools to accelerate some of them or contribute to some of these steps. We could use for ideation, we could use generative AI for building the prototype, for gathering user feedback. We could also change a little bit the agenda based on the type of solution we're going to create. If the type of solution we're going to create is an AI based, we can optimize this process for that. And there are also some recommendations. First, save some time for a second iteration of the prototype the week after this first week, because we have already the team built and the momentum. If we need to iterate and do some refinements before we can make the decision of going ahead with the solution of pivoting, having 2 or 3 days the week after to do a second iteration on the prototype and user testing can be really valuable. And additionally, you could be implementing some pre-work. We could do the defining the problem well enough before the design sprint and recruiting participants before the design sprint. If you are ready to innovate how you innovate, design sprint might be the right way forward for you. Because a design sprint is more than a tool. If you adopt design sprint, it gives your organization a strategic advantage about how to approach uncertainty. First of all, you change the culture of your teams, and they will start learning that what matters here is to test something that is good enough to get real user feedback, and that decisions are made on that, as opposed to internal politics, who is talking more, and endless debates. If you start using it and your competitors don't use it yet, you are able to validate much faster and quicker how to proceed with your next steps and your strategy with confidence. And finally, when we use design sprint, we are able to use more efficiently and effectively our teams, and not only use them more effectively so that they build better products, but that they are more engaged because they see that they have invested that time and effort in creating things that are appreciated and wanted by users. So when you bring design sprint into your organization, not only you are building products faster, but you are building better products and you have teams that are more engaged, which is a great advantage to have in increasingly crowded markets. And you don't have to start big. Actually, you can start small and then scale for success. You might identify one challenge that you can pilot design sprint with. You identify this challenge and you have the help of an expert facilitator to run the first design sprint with. After that, you make the decision. Should you have an internal capability? Should you train people internally? Should you hire an expert? Or can you partner with people like myself that are design sprint facilitators to help you implement design sprints in the things that matter to your organization? And finally, when you have this capability, then you start scaling strategically when and how to implement it in multiple teams and initiatives. So, think about a challenge or a problem you are trying to solve right now, or an opportunity. Is the design sprint right for it? Are you about to invest in significant resources in a solution that you have not validated yet with users? Do stakeholders have different perspectives on how to approach that problem or solution? Will getting it wrong damage your reputation, customer relationship, or morale in your team? Can you assemble a small team of cross-functional experts that will help to move that forward in just 4 days? Are you committed on acting on whatever comes out of that sprint? If the answer to many of these questions is yes, This is a good candidate to do a sprint with. So, are you ready to stop building the wrong thing? Here, it's not about if you can afford to run a 4-day sprint, but actually, what is the cost of you not running it? If you want to get moving, contact me and we will explore what's the best approach for you and your team to get started.